In this video, we're going to look at how spring tension will determine which muscle group is loaded and the level of intensity. This is a fundamental principle for reformer workouts, and when you understand this, it'll make everything so simple, particularly cueing exercises. So behind me here at the top, we've got the gradient of spring tension we organised earlier. And the interesting thing about this is if you were to try out every one of these different levels with the same exercise, you'd find at some point the focus would shift. For example, if you're using the standing split as the exercise, at some point here, the focus would go from working the inner thighs to the outer thighs. So the spring tension will determine that. Same with the wheelbarrow. At some point here, but in this range of tension, the focus would go from the abdominals to the shoulders. So that threshold is here, between the heavy and the medium spring. The medium spring is supportive enough to help you come back, and the heavy spring is enough resistance now that you actually have to push to move the carriage out. So the best way to experience this is to feel it in your own body. So what I recommend now is grabbing a reformer. We're going to set the spring to medium, and we're going to get into the standing split position. So 1 foot on the platform, 1 foot on the carriage, side facing, legs straight, and you're going to slide out into a split, and you're going to drag the carriage back. And what you're going to feel are your inner thighs loaded with your body weight. The slower you go, the further you go, the harder it will be. Now, this is where you're going to experience the difference of spring levels. So as you bring it in, we're going to switch the medium now to the light spring instead. Do the exact same movement. Feel how there's less support, and now you have to work harder to support yourself. Let's bring it in again. Let's take off the light spring, and let's do this with no spring. Now there's no support. Now it's you versus gravity. Now this is going to be the hardest version of doing the standing split for the inner thighs. So to contrast this experience, we're going to look at how spring tension will switch the focus now. So instead, let's put on a heavy spring. Let's get back to the standing split position. Now I want you to push that carriage out. Straight legs, drive out as far as you can. Let it come back. Let's try that with a heavy and a light spring now. And now it's the same movement, same muscle groups, but more resistance. So you're going to have to work harder to push it out. And let's do it again with a heavy and a medium. Even more resistance. So what we're finding is, even though you're in the same body position for the standing split, doing the same movement pattern, the spring tension you have is determining the muscle group that we're working and the level of intensity. So that is a fundamental principle which will revolutionize the way you instruct, because I don't actually have to tell you to engage anything. All I have to do is know which body position you're in with what spring and which muscle group that will work, and I can guarantee you're going to get the experience that is intended. So to really make sure this is clear, I would love you to try this again, but with the wheelbarrow. So this one is where you've got your hands on the bar, knees on the carriage, feet in the shoulder pads, arms straight, hinge at the shoulder and slide away. If you do this with a medium tension, you're going to feel your abdominals loaded with your body weight. If you switch that to a light spring, less support means you have to work harder to support yourself, and try that with no spring, and there's no support, much harder. Now when you bring it back, let's change it to the heavy spring instead. Now we're going to have to push to move the carriage out. Now we're going to be working the shoulders, and as you go up the levels here with more resistance, you have to work harder to push it out. So the message is, spring tension alone will determine the muscle group we're targeting and the level of intensity. With that understanding, I don't have to tell you how to engage anything. I just have to know which body position you're in with what spring tension and which muscle group that's loading. And that means now that when I cue this, I can be much more intentional, and I don't need to say as many words, and I can guarantee everyone's getting the experience that's intended.